The United States just crossed $34 trillion in national debt, and the interest payments alone now exceed the entire defense budget, surpassing $870 billion a year. That means the world's most powerful nation is spending more servicing what it owes than it spends protecting its citizens. And America is not alone. From Beijing to Berlin to Tokyo, the governments that supposedly run the global economy are quietly sinking under obligations they have no realistic plan to repay. This is not a future crisis. It is happening right now, and it is reshaping everything from the price of your mortgage to the geopolitical order your children will inherit. Start with what this means in human terms. In the United Kingdom, local councils across the country are issuing Section 114 notices, the British equivalent of municipal bankruptcy, because they simply cannot balance their books after years of rising debt service costs and shrinking tax revenues. Birmingham, the UK's second-largest city, declared effective bankruptcy in 2023, cutting essential services and laying off thousands of workers. In China, local government debt has ballooned past $9 trillion, forcing provinces to slash infrastructure spending and delay payments to contractors, leaving construction workers unpaid and half-finished apartment towers dotting the skylines of cities like Zhengzhou and Kunming. In Japan, where government debt exceeds 260% of GDP, the highest ratio among developed nations, the Bank of Japan is trapped printing money just to keep borrowing costs from spiraling out of control, weakening the yen so severely that import costs are crushing ordinary households. These are not abstract fiscal statistics. They are closed libraries, unpaid workers, and families paying more for groceries because their currency is collapsing under the weight of sovereign obligations. So how did the world's most powerful nations end up here? And why does nobody in power seem willing to fix it? The answer requires understanding a structural shift that began decades ago and accelerated catastrophically after 2008. For most of the 20th century, government borrowing followed a rough cycle. Nations borrowed during wars and recessions, then paid down debt during periods of growth. The United States ran surpluses after World War II, and by the 1970s, debt-to-GDP ratios across the developed world were historically low. The turning point came in the 1980s, when policymakers in Washington, London, and across Europe embraced a new orthodoxy: borrow now, grow later, and assume the bill would never truly come due. Tax cuts were paired with increased spending. Military budgets swelled. Entitlement programs expanded. And crucially, central banks discovered they could suppress interest rates and buy government bonds themselves, creating a seemingly endless loop where states borrowed at almost no cost. This worked beautifully for a while. Interest rates fell from double digits to near zero. Debt exploded, but servicing it remained cheap. Then 2008 shattered the illusion. Governments bailout out their financial systems with trillions in new borrowing. The United States alone spent over $700 billion on TARP and then layered on stimulus packages. Europe faced its own sovereign debt crisis, with Greece, Portugal, Ireland, and nearly Spain and Italy requiring rescue packages. Japan, already drowning, doubled down with massive Abenomics-era stimulus. And then came 2020. The pandemic response was the single largest coordinated borrowing event in human history. The United States added roughly $5 trillion to its national debt in just 2 fiscal years. The European Union launched a joint recovery fund worth €750 billion, breaking its own taboo against collective borrowing. Every major economy chose debt over disruption, and they were not wrong in the short term. The alternative was depression, but the long-term cost is now arriving all at once. Here is what most people miss. This is not simply a collection of national problems. It is a single global system under synchronized stress. When the United States borrows at scale, it issues treasury bonds that form the bedrock of the entire global financial system. Pension funds, foreign central banks, and sovereign wealth funds hold trillions in U.S. debt as their safest asset. But when America's interest payments consume an ever larger share of its federal budget, the risk premium on that debt rises. Investors start demanding higher yields. Those higher yields then ripple through every corner of the world, from mortgage rates in Sao Paulo to corporate borrowing costs in Mumbai. The dollar's dominance means American fiscal irresponsibility becomes everyone's monetary tightening. And now the geopolitical dimension is compounding the fiscal one. China holds roughly $770 billion in U.S. treasuries, a financial weapon it has begun slowly wielding by diversifying its reserves and promoting the yuan in bilateral trade settlements. Russia has already been cut off from Western debt markets entirely, forcing it to rely on domestic borrowing and Chinese capital. The weaponization of the dollar-based financial system is accelerating de-dollarization efforts that, if they gain real momentum, could trigger a crisis of confidence in the very asset the world depends on for stability. The cruel irony is that the solutions available to indebted governments are all politically impossible or economically devastating. Raising taxes on the wealthy or corporations triggers capital flight and political backlash. Cutting spending on healthcare, pensions, or defense is electoral suicide. Printing more money to inflate away the debt destroys the currency and punishes savers and the poor. And defaulting, even partially, as Sri Lanka and Zambia have recently demonstrated, collapses the economy overnight. So governments do what governments always do when trapped. They kick the can. They borrow more to service existing obligations, hoping growth will eventually outpace the debt. But demographics are working against them. Aging populations in Europe, Japan, and increasingly China mean fewer workers supporting more retirees. The ratio of debt to productive economic output is worsening, not improving, and no amount of AI optimism or green energy investment can outrun the math of compounding interest on $34 trillion. What comes next is not a single dramatic collapse, but a slow, grinding erosion of fiscal sovereignty. Nations will lose the ability to respond to the next crisis, whether it is a war, a pandemic, or a climate disaster, because they have already spent the borrowing capacity they would need. The next emergency will not be met with stimulus. It will be met with austerity imposed by markets that finally refuse to lend at tolerable rates. Citizens will experience this as crumbling infrastructure, longer hospital wait times, reduced military readiness, and currencies that buy less every year. The wealthiest nations on Earth are not going to go bankrupt in the way a company does. They will go bankrupt in the way an empire does, slowly from the inside, while insisting everything is fine until it is not. The real story is not that these nations owe too much money. It is that they have borrowed against a future that arrived ahead of schedule,